Hi everyone, thanks for joining us again this evening. I'm Nikki, welcome back to our Facebook Lives. We have a really interesting Facebook Live this evening, one that is always going to be quite emotional and can be quite a sensitive topic, but it's something that's really important to discuss with our arthritic dogs, and that sort of navigating end of life for them and managing their arthritis towards the end of their lives. So it's a really massive topic, and we have to handle it really carefully, but we also have to be very honest and bring up anybody's worries and discuss them. So please do ask plenty of questions, and no question is ever stupid. So please, if you have something you're worried about, any experiences that you want to ask about, please do as we go through. So yeah, let's get started. I am first of all going to say thank you very much to Big Barker for sponsoring our live tonight. And I'm just going to share their little video here with these beautiful pooches. And I'm pretty sure this is based in America, this video, because the weather looks amazing and it just looks like there's a lot of space. But yeah, thank you, Big Barker, for sponsoring all our lives at the moment. We really appreciate it. And if you need a good bed for your arthritic dog, they are the ones to get. I'm just going to take that one off. And then I am going to introduce our amazing guest this evening, who I think some of you know, because I've already seen somebody saying hello from Denver. So that must be somebody familiar or in that neck of the woods. But this evening we have Kathleen Cooney, who is currently in Denver. Is that right? In Colorado?
I'm about an hour north, yes.
Okay, so a bit of a time difference again, like we had last week. We had New York, so we're very, very international. So Kathleen specialises in end of life care. I'm going to pass on to her to talk about what she does and why she's so passionate about what she does, because she's going to explain it a lot better than I can. So thank you so much, Kathy, for coming on. Would you like to just give us an introduction about yourself?
Sure, thank you. And I'm going to keep it a short introduction because I know we've got a lot of good content to cover, and I imagine there's going to be a lot of questions and comments coming in. But yes, I am a veterinarian and I do practice in Colorado in the US, and I've been out here for about 25 years. I've been a veterinarian for about 18 years. And just a little fun background is I thought when I went to vet school that I'd be a horse vet, and then fell in love with more small animal medicine, and very serendipitous. And the way I was meant to be guided was to end up focusing on end of life. So I did a little bit of private practice work in Michigan for a couple of years. And for whatever reason, the staff kept kind of moving euthanasia appointments my way. And before I knew it, I was the veterinarian handling most of the euthanasias. And it was because everybody felt, I guess, comfortable with me, and I really liked to settle in and listen to stories. And it was just a very relaxing, meaningful, enriching experience when it was done well. And I was always hoping that I was doing euthanasia appointments well. So we knew that we were going to move back to Colorado. And I thought, what can I do in this beautiful mountain state that is a little bit unique and a little bit different? And I ended up forming a mobile or in-home end-of-life veterinary company where we performed home euthanasia, and then eventually moved into what's known as animal hospice or end-of-life care, and then eventually had a pet crematory as well. And so a kind of a full-service end-of-life company, and absolutely loved it. And then I was writing books and teaching and doing other things about end-of-life care, and ended up forming a company called the Companion Animal Euthanasia Training Academy. That's a mouthful. The acronym is CAETA. And with this group, we teach euthanasia best practices all over the world. It's an international group. And what we focus in on are what we call the 14 essential components of euthanasia. And that is supporting the owner with grief support, and then building rapport and being very helpful and compassionate and those things. And then with our patients, many of them arthritic, older dogs, that we are making sure that we're using what we refer to as pre-euthanasia sedation or anesthesia, right, to help to welcome that deep sleep. And then we train on the proper techniques so that all veterinary professionals know how to deliver a very obviously efficient euthanasia, but also one that's highly skilled. And so all these elements rolled into it. So been working with this CAETA program now for 5 years. And then lastly, I'll just share that I am Chief Medical Officer of a company here in Colorado called Caring Pathways. And Caring Pathways is a home hospice and euthanasia service. And there are other companies like it now across the world. It definitely was started here, this type of industry or field within vet med and specializing in end-of-life care really blossomed here in the United States, but it's been growing into the UK and across Europe and all over. So my hospice work these days and helping to build care plans and all that is with a group called Caring Pathways. And there is one more thing. I'm also working on being what's a boarded specialist in animal welfare. So as well as being a veterinarian, I'm now very passionate about, of course, hospice and end-of-life care, euthanasia, but animal welfare as a whole, which I know is a really big hot topic in the UK. So kudos to all of you out there in the UK doing such good work in animal welfare.
That's brilliant. So much behind you that makes you obviously a really good person to talk about this topic. I mean, we were saying earlier that a euthanasia consultation or that last consultation that you have with your vet and your dog is so important, and it stays with people for a long time. And you don't want people to have bad memories or to be unprepared or just be traumatized. You know, it's quite a common thing that people are traumatized. I know, speaking, my own mother lost her dog in November last year, and every day she thinks back, she plays it through in her mind. It didn't go particularly well, and you know, she is traumatized by it. So it's a huge thing that we all need to get as right as we can.
Absolutely. You know, listening to you, Nikki, I'm reminded that, of course, there's no do-overs. And because we want to get everything just right, we come to a euthanasia appointment with multiple layers of emotion. It's the emotion of saying goodbye to such a dear friend, but it's also the emotions that are tied to worry and to fear of how things are going to go. Is it going to be smooth? Am I going to be able to be with my pet all the way through? Which was such a hard thing during the peak of the pandemic. You know, where a lot of times people weren't able to be with their pets. So there's a lot of complexities that go into a euthanasia experience. And the best thing that everyone can do from the get-go is to try to relax as much as possible. So you know, you yourself, the pet owners, to take a lot of deep breaths and relax your muscles and just kind of create that very even energy as best you can. And the veterinary team needs to do that too. And if they're good at what they do, they're hopefully helping you to relax by showing a lot of compassion and conveying confidence that everything's going to go well. And there are many times where families don't get a chance to work with their regular vet. You know, it might be a new vet that they've never met before, or a nurse or someone else on the team that's an unfamiliar face. So it's a matter of trying to build that rapport as quickly as possible to establish that trust. And then also practice patience and forgiveness during the euthanasia, because it is a medical procedure. And while we want everything to go perfectly smooth, there are times where things get a little bit complicated. In fact, I was thinking the other day, this is one of the few veterinary procedures that owners ask to be present for, expect to be present for. And it's over 80% of families expect to be there during euthanasia. And so again, that trust is really important with the veterinary team, and slowing down and establishing that rapport, and again, practicing forgiveness if things get a little bit challenging. I do always hope that the vets do their absolute best, use their best skills.
Of course. Yeah. I mean, I'm thinking back to the case with my mom and her dog. I think, being a vet myself, I could say to her, this wasn't just you that went through this trauma. You know, the vets, when things don't go as you had planned them, It's not nice for anyone, and it's not because of anyone's inexperience in a lot of cases. It's just in that situation, I don't think maybe they had prepared as much as they could have done in advance, but it's through no fault of the vet at all. But yeah, not everything goes perfectly, and like you say, it's you have to be able to forgive and try and move on, I suppose. But I think going back to what you were saying about people being relaxed, the owners trying to be relaxed, the veterinary team trying to be relaxed as well, and it's so important because we have to think about who is the center of this consultation, who is the center of what we're about to do, and it's the dog, isn't it? And of course, as an owner, they pick up on your moods, on the way you're holding yourself, and they know. And it's so important to just be there for them and do what you can to make them feel comfortable as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. If our audience today remembers nothing else from this talk, is to remember this. And hopefully I don't have a glitch in Wi-Fi right this second. So is to remember this is the power of the sigh, of taking deep breaths and relaxation. Me as the veterinarian in the room, that's one of the best exercises I can do to relax the family as well as relax my patient. It's just to take a deep sigh multiple times throughout the appointment, because again, it just decreases all of that just amped up tone and that intensity. To just relax it down. So every time I see my clients or my pet owners take a deep sigh, I take a deep sigh. When they see me take a deep sigh, they take a deep sigh. And I don't know about you, but my own animals, my own dogs, of which I've got a Labrador and 2 pugs, if they are looking out the window, if they're thinking something's going on, all I got to do is go, and they seem to do the same thing and lay their head back down and just chill out. So I love the power of the sigh.
Yeah, no, that's I'm gonna start doing that. See if it improves things. Thank you. So when I guess what we do want to talk about is, when do we start to talk about euthanasia and end of life? When is a good time? How do we start to talk about it?
You know, there's a lot of conversation out there about, is euthanasia a taboo subject, or is it something that can be brought to the forefront earlier in the life stages? There's some that say that we can talk about the entire life journey, including death, during a puppy kitten visit. That it's okay to bring it up and say, we, as a veterinary professional, for example, to talk to a family and say, I'm hoping to care for your animal, your pet, all the way through its life. And to kind of talk about those life stages, and to recognize that eventually, if all goes well, our dogs will reach the point of senior, and then more likely a frailer geriatric state. And then death will come. And it's okay to talk about that and say that when the time comes where we've reached that end of life stage, again, hopefully when they're very advanced in their years, old enough to start have been building arthritis, that we can open up the conversation much, much earlier and let them know that there's choices for hospice, and which includes palliative medicine, which is so important for arthritis management. And that the choice or the option for euthanasia is always there, but it's not something that has to be forced, and that it should feel safe. So talking about something like this when animals are young is pretty rare. I think it's more common when the dogs start to become seniors, where the veterinarians might be then advocating for the senior wellness panels, blood work, maybe some x-rays, those types of things. And to say, what, we don't know what life's going to bring. We don't know what their full story is going to be. But when we know we're reaching the end of it, the veterinarian would be advised to start bringing up, that it's okay to reach out for us for end of life decisions, including euthanasia and hospice, right? We don't just have to say euthanasia anymore. Now we can say hospice and palliative care. And then if the vets don't bring it up, which a lot of the times they may not, because they don't want to sound like they're giving up hope or sound like
No.
something is hopeless, where then pet owners, all of you listening, can be your dog's advocate to speak up and say, I want to know what my options are. I want to be as prepared as possible. And we can do that again when our dogs are reaching more of that, even just now we've got osteoarthritis. We know that we've got that, but there might be other conditions that are starting to pop up, or sadly, there might be a cancer that presents or something else that's going to be a terminal condition. Definitely want to make sure that we're bringing up our end of life choices then. What do I need to know as a pet owner? What do I need to know to prepare? And even ask about, hospice and those things, so that we can provide good comfort care without cure, but comfort care until our dogs may pass on their own, may die naturally with, again, really good support, or we opt for euthanasia. So be your own best advocate and don't shy away from the topic. It's okay to bring it up. And Nikki, you and I were talking about before that veterinarians welcome that, because we don't want to be the ones who are addressing that elephant in the room all the time and wondering if we're overstepping our bounds. So if a pet owner would ever to bring up euthanasia as I just want to know what my choices are, really important.
Yeah, really important. And also discussing it once, fine. And then changing what you're going to discuss the next time. You may have an idea in your mind or a goal or a time when you feel that, I think when this happens, I will make that decision for my dog. So when she doesn't want to come for her walk, for example, that's going to be the day that I decide I'm going to let her go. But this plan or this prepared, this discussion can be ongoing, and it can change depending on how your dog responds to certain things you're doing. Like you said, there may be something else that happens beyond your control that will accelerate that process and mean that you have to have another chat and change what you're going to do. And it's just got to be an ongoing discussion. And yes, vets will welcome it, because they don't want to bring it up. And sometimes we don't see dogs regularly enough to know the client well enough to know what they're thinking. So it can be really hard.
Yeah, it's all about partnership, right? It's not about the veterinarian necessarily dictating exactly what has to happen. It's about partnership and feeling safe to open up the conversation. So, if you have a veterinary relationship where you don't really feel safe in having these conversations, try to foster that more. Try to change that, so that when the end of life kind of journey begins, that you really know that you've got a friend in your corner. I mean, that's a win-win. We always want to find the win-win in every situation. And I was just working on a presentation about hospice and writing about what is known as the VCPR, the veterinary client patient relationship. I'm going to say that again, the veterinary client patient relationship. And it's an equal partnership. It is the veterinarian giving recommendations after listening and hearing about what's important with you, the pet owner, and your dog, making those recommendations. And then you as a client following those recommendations, or speaking up and offering your honesty and your opinion about things, or saying, no, I can't do that for these reasons. And then the veterinarian listening and offering agreement and changing or pivoting from the original treatment plan to meet your needs and to meet the needs of your dogs. So it's a relationship with the dog at the core, right? Making sure that their needs are met, that we're not allowing them to linger in a suffering state without good palliative medicine, pain management, household modifications, all these things that I imagine you talk about regularly in this group. Making sure that all of that is adjusted and managed for the pet's well-being. Because if we don't have a good end of life journey for our dogs, it can be very scary to think about getting another dog, or
Yes.
what's going to happen with the other dog that we have in the household when they start to get those gray hairs and those conditions as they age. So we don't want end of life and senior years to be fearful and hold a lot of worry. In fact, if your group is not familiar with the concept of anticipatory grief, I imagine many are, but it's
Yeah.
when we recognize that our dogs are nearing the end of their life that we start to grieve well in advance. And that can be a
Yeah.
very crippling time, a very crippling
Yes.
time.
Yeah. I think with arthritis, it's very different to other conditions or other reasons why a pet might be put to sleep or euthanized, because it is something that we know is going to happen, and you can be prepared, and it can take, there is no set amount. It's not like, okay, my dog's got arthritis, so in 2 years time I know I'm going to have to make that decision. Every journey is very different, and you're living with that the whole time, because once it's in your mind, you almost can't think of anything else. Just thinking,
Mhm.
I want to do right by my dog, and I want to make sure that I don't do anything that is just for me and not for my dog, and make them go on and not have a very good quality of life. So it is, yeah, it is a really hard time when you know that you're going to have to make that decision at some point. Really tough.
And we humans love to feel guilty. We
Yes.
love, not love is the right word, but it's common for us to feel regret. I wish, I wish, I wish, I wish, I wish I would have
Mm,
known. I wish I would have done something different. Even my old yellow lab named Sally that I had for 14 years, she had a fabulous life, fabulous.
mm,
And yes, she developed osteoarthritis and we had to manage that for a couple of years, but she had a very peaceful death. Everything went smooth. I knew everything I needed to possibly know for her, but I still felt guilty over all the
yes.
steps we had in our house. We had a house loaded with steps, and I was like, I should have bought just a one level house for her with not a single step. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
when we know better, we do better. But the object here is to share and empower everybody to speak up earlier. And if you've had times where you wish you would have done something differently, use that as a legacy and say,
Yeah.
now I feel empowered to change and alter the future and
Yeah.
speak up on what's important. And it's okay to do pre-planning. In fact, pre-planning is the number one thing for the end of life journey that we have found to be such a game changer. So it's
Yeah.
about opening up the conversation earlier with the veterinary team. It's about making household modifications as best you can to maintain that comfort and mobility with our canine arthritic pets, and
Mm,
it's about then even planning for after death, right? Planning for cremation services
yeah.
or burial or how we're going to memorialize. And it's not weird to do
No.
that when they're younger, or even think about this is I hear clients talk about having photo shoots and parties and tribute events where they're having kind of memorials or pseudo funerals before the death of their dog. Give everyone a chance to say goodbye.
Yeah.
That's what we're talking about with this empowering and trying to reduce down the feeling of having missed out on things. Now, that being said, there probably many of you listening going, oh yes, I wish I would have done something different last time. But
Mm,
now you've got that information in place and you're going to use that in the future. I know I will. Lots of things I'm going to
yeah.
change with all my other dogs.
Yeah. And you can only change things when something has happened and it hasn't, that you need to
Yeah.
change. So, if
Yeah.
everything's going fine, you're not going to change it. So, yeah, it's all experience, isn't it? Which everyone has in every walk of life. It's not just
Yeah.
this.
It's an
Um,
opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's just a question or a comment here from Amanda, which I just wanted to bring up. So my
Mhm.
dog has lots of health issues: lumbosacral disease, bilateral luxating patellas, arthritis, IBD, liver disease, and allergies. He's 11 years old, and we think he's currently having an IBD and allergy flare up, and he now has hearing loss. I've said a couple of times to my two vets recently that I'm not sure if we're doing the right thing to continue treating him. Both vets have said they're happy that my dog is still happy and he's still very bouncy. He loves his food and still wants, I think that's to exercise. Um, what I wanted to say with that comment is that there are things that we can do. And in this discussion, as a vet, it is our role to say, this is what we can do. It doesn't mean that that's what you have to do. And like Kathy said, it's got to be a discussion. It's a team, and everyone has to be talking and thinking about, you as the owner of the dog is going to know what your dog would want, more than a vet would. So, I would certainly, discuss it with them and say, if you genuinely don't think you're doing the right thing, they may just not know that you are open to potentially euthanasia or palliative care, rather than trying to do lots and lots of things.
Yes, I would also add in to create maybe a calendar and track some of those things that you don't like, whether or not it's a particular symptom that's presented or a behavior change you're not certain about, and start to track those things and share those with the vets. Also a good idea, if you have the opportunity in your community, your neck of the woods, is to bring somebody to your home or to do a video where they can see your dog possibly doing the things that you're concerned about, right? So pictures worth 1,000 words, video 10,000 words, where you can give a better idea to them of what's going on. And if they're not still listening and hearing everything that you're saying, it's okay to work with yet another vet and bring them in. And fortunately, we have a lot more focused in on hospice and palliative care, mobile services and those things now than we've ever had before. So again, depending on where you reside, you might already have somebody there that specializes in this. But if not, it's okay. Just continue to be the advocate for your dog and speak up, especially with that many things that are going on. The body can change fairly quickly. And it's important that we have even this concept of what's known as standing orders in place. Standing orders is a concept that comes from human hospice, where the hospice doctor already has given information to the nursing staff about what we're going to do next. And then after that, and then after that, and how to layer that on. So that if something changes quickly, hopefully that veterinary team can offer good recommendations right away. So start tracking things. And with that in mind, Nikki, this is probably as good a time as any to bring up quality of life scales and assessment tools that anybody can utilize. It's not like you have to be a veterinarian to use a quality of life scale, although your veterinarian is advised to go over one with you to really understand where your dog is in kind of a disease trajectory, and how they're doing with their conditions. But quality of life scales are something that anybody can look up online and try to rank their dog's health and overall well-being and use that as something to track and monitor.
Because that's something that's going to change, and you can keep a record of that and know which direction, how quickly, in which direction it's going as well. So that's really important to have that. You can also just set your own, again, your dog better than anyone else, and you can set the 4 or 5 points about your dog and measure those. When we talk about this a lot on CAM, about monitoring your dog and whether it's getting better, how it's responding to different medication, how it's responding to the lifestyle changes that you're making. And it may just be, how quickly my dog's getting up, how easy is it for him to get up the steps into the car? Are they enjoying their walks? Just, you have to pinpoint 4 or 5 different key points and measure those. And you can just do that very easily at home, can't you?
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing with that is pain scales, which is so important with arthritis, is to understand what facial expressions are from the dog to body posture. So what are those signs of pain? I imagine your audience here is very familiar with that, but if you're not, is to continue to research and get extremely familiar with canine body language. Going beyond that, I'd also like to say that what you just talked about, kind of creating a list of things that the dog loves to do is important. But also recognizing that a young, healthy dog is very different than a dying dog. And dying dogs have a new normal where they start to have a decreased appetite. They're not drinking as much, or they may drink more for a period of time, and then that starts to decrease. They may be sleeping a lot. They may be seeking out places of solitude, places where they normally don't sleep. So there's a normal progression towards death. Dying is a process. So it's a matter of saying, is what they're going through as they reach the natural end of their life suffering? Is there clear discomfort there, or is it just look different than what they did when they're younger?
Yeah.
So with that, when talking to your veterinarian, is using a quality of life scale, using a pain scale to get a good gauge of where they're at today. And just like you said, Nikki, it's going to be very fluid. It's going to change. We're going to have good days and bad days, and good weeks and bad weeks. And that if, when you're kind of starting into that, the care that's required in the final, we'll say, months of life, that having that list of things that the dog loves to do is important. And when one of those goes away, a choice needs to be made. Are we going to bump up our care, or is this the time now that we're going to reach for euthanasia?
Yeah.
Because doing nothing isn't really a good solution. Something needs to be done, because we might have more pain. We may have more nausea. We may have more confusion from cognitive dysfunction and those things.
Yeah.
And so something needs to be done. And that's, again, kind of as you watch a disease trajectory go like this, there's going to be good days and bad days. And whenever we make the choice for euthanasia on a bad day, for example, it's very much a leap of faith that things weren't going to improve.
Yeah.
And we have to take ownership and feel acceptance of, it's okay if there was maybe a few more days that we're going to be there.
Yeah.
To choose euthanasia when we choose it, because we don't know what's coming down the pipeline. And if we want to ensure that we're going to decrease suffering, especially when we've done everything we could for palliative care, then it's okay to choose euthanasia. On a bad day, it's okay to choose euthanasia on a good day.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes it is a team, and you have to be ready as well as your dog being ready. And whatever happens, like you said before, you're always going to have guilt, and you're always going to think, oh, should I have waited till tomorrow? He might have had a really good day tomorrow, but it's going to happen. You're going to feel that way. But you just need to have those discussions. And one other thing that I would encourage people to do is, even after you have let your dog go, it will have been the right decision, almost certainly. But if you have those thoughts, or you're worried about it, nobody is going to mind. A vet is not going to mind talking to you the day after, the week after. If you need to talk through these things, talk to someone that was there with you through that journey, and because they're going to understand. And we have been through this ourselves as well. A lot of vets, Kathleen was saying, with her dog letting her go, the guilt about the steps, and probably you spoke about it as a family and said, oh, maybe we should have done something differently. It's okay to talk about it after the event as well. You need to talk about it, because that's part of the grieving, the process, really. Would you agree?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you said something very important, is that to surround yourself with people who understand, that understand how important your dog is to you and to the rest of the dogs in the household and to the rest of the family, and all of those that have been touched by the dog in its life. During euthanasia, I often say to my family that's in the room, our version of a prayer, or something very respectful in the right tone, to say goodbye to a dear friend, and thank you for all that you've shared in this life. And thank you for these wonderful memories. And we know how much you will be missed in talking to the dog. You will be so missed. You've touched so many lives. And when people cry during euthanasia, I remind them that we all need someone to cry for us. It's important that we cry for our dogs, for our pets, for anyone that's loved, because that's a sign of a life well lived.
Definitely.
And that really resonates with people.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough because a lot of people, they come in and they want to be brave for their dog, don't they? And you want to say to them,
Yeah.
It's fine, go ahead, have a cry is what you need to do." And yeah, your dog your dog knows that you love them, and yeah, you need to do what you need to do. So yeah, absolutely. It's really
I'd like to bring up with that point, Nikki, that it's another reason why the CAETA program advocates so much for pre-euthanasia sedation or anesthesia, basically sleep before euthanasia.
Mm.
And there are many times where families are trying to remain strong, trying not to cry because they don't want to upset their dog. And I always say, you just do you. It's probably more stressful for the dog to see you trying to hold back
Yeah,
and
yeah.
that energy. So just let it out. It's okay. It's all good. But that sedation medicine relaxes the dog into deep sleep. And then the families can really let loose. They can grieve and
Mm.
mourn the way that they want, very, very openly, while the dog is sleeping, but yet before death. And that's a very powerful time. So if any of this is resonating with the audience and you're liking what you hear, I just like to give a few advocacy things that you can talk to your veterinarian about
Yeah.
to set the right stage for euthanasia. Would that be useful, Nikki?
Yes, absolutely. Yes, please.
All right. So we kind of talked about before the importance of pre-planning. So think about how you want euthanasia to be carried out. Do you want it in your home?
Mm.
And if you do, make sure to ask your veterinary team, do you provide home euthanasia? Because much of the time when you call to schedule, or maybe you're already in the hospital and the decision's been made, but your dog isn't critical yet, you can ask, is home euthanasia an option?
Mm.
And then if it is for the veterinary team, they'll make arrangements. You can go home or they'll show up, at another day, whatever the situation is, they'll come right there to your home. If they don't do that, then ask, is there a mobile veterinarian in my community that's good at euthanasia, that does a lot of it, that knows how to handle if things might get a little bit complicated, because you're usually by themselves. They don't have a lot of support staff.
No.
And, but anyway, just if you want home euthanasia, ask for it. If it's going to be, actually, regardless of where we're at in the location, whether or not it's in a hospital or at the home, surround yourself by people that you feel safe with. So
Mm.
ask for other loved ones to be there, including children, right? I'm a big advocate for having children present, and
Yeah.
to ask the veterinarian to explain things in a way to a child that they would understand. So I
Mm.
do that a lot. Then other pets might be able to be there. Here at my comfort center, which I'm in right now, I euthanized a sweet little dog probably about 2 months ago. And the owner brought in another dog and a cat. And so we had this little trio of animal companions there in the room while we said goodbye to the one dog. And it was
Yeah.
lovely. So if you want other animals to be there, please ask if that's possible. How about readings or music? You can have a special candle that you might want to bring in with you. Some
Mm.
people bring in incense and certain smells or flowers. We've had people bring in, or certainly at their home environment, bring certain pictures nearby of other pets that
Mm.
have passed before, or human loved ones that have gone before, that they can be a part of it. And with that in mind, there's an opportunity to do things like Zoom and to
Yeah.
FaceTime, so that you can have someone who can't be physically present still be there.
Mm.
So those are just some ideas. I can think of a bazillion more, like dog beds and favorite foods and anything that provides comfort. But
Yeah.
ask if you can have those things there. And if they say, no, you can't have all, but maybe you can have some, great.
Yeah.
At least we're doing
Yeah.
something to provide that extra layer of comfort.
Yeah. And I think things are getting better again for that, because all throughout COVID, we couldn't do house visits, and it was very limited, and it was awful. That was one of the hardest things, to be able to still keep that, that environment, I suppose, and to do what you want to do and keep it so that everyone is there, and the dog is ideally where they are the most comfortable. And it was really hard not to be able to. So thankfully, wherever I'm working at the moment, things are getting back to normal. House visits are becoming the norm again, which is great. And also in the UK, I know the US sort of leads the field with this, but we are getting more of those mobile veterinary services that can come out to you. And it might be, you know, overnight or on a Sunday when your normal veterinary practice isn't open. And it's always worth, although you may prefer to have your own vet, of course, who knows your dog and knows you, but that's not always going to be the way. So again, that's another discussion to have with your vet, because they will probably know of and be able to advise on local providers that can come out and do that for you. So it's another thing to discuss with them.
Perfect. You know, there's a question that came up here about, you know, sedatives that we should avoid and things like that.
Yeah.
We talked about how to create a very safe environment for you, for your dog.
Yeah.
But then let's talk a little bit about the technical aspect. And again, things that you can talk to your veterinarian about. And that is number one of what we consider modern euthanasia is to keep you with your dog. So to try to avoid as much as possible the dog being brought back to a treatment area for a catheter being placed or those things, which in the home environment, we rarely separate the bonded pair.
No,
we usually keep them together, which is what we've proven over many years now. It can be done. So if you don't want to be separated from your dog, please ask for everything to be done together. And it's okay if, you know, if there might be a little bit difficult time accessing a vein or something like that, it does happen. That's the number one reason that veterinary teams want to move a dog back to a treatment area, is because they don't want to fumble around or, you know, have any sort of struggle in front of a pet owner.
Totally.
So with that, what we then do is advocate for giving the sedation, right? To give something to the dog before any technical work is done. So with regards to the sedatives, what we're usually recommending is that after we've kind of gone through a little bit of the paperwork and make sure that things are in order and build rapport, then we go ahead and we give the dog a sedative injection or even oral medications that take very quick effect to relax the dog into comfortable sleep. Whether or not it's a light sleep or deep sleep is sometimes independent. Then more of the technical things can be done. Okay. So the question was, are there any sedatives that we should avoid? Not necessarily, right? It's going to be very case by case dependent of what one dog needs over another. And hopefully the veterinary team will be able to assess the dog in a efficient and quick manner to decide which drugs to reach for. Okay. But I wouldn't necessarily say there's something that we should avoid, such as if you hear about this particular drug, like, oh, I never want my dog to have that. It's really case by case dependent.
Yeah.
But it's such a benefit. And we call it the blessed sleep, where the dog can be as relaxed and pain-free as possible before those final moments of life with euthanasia.
I think with the sedatives, and it's the same with any drug really in veterinary medicine, is that the one that your vet will use is the one that they are most comfortable with and they have the most experience with. So I know that the drugs I use are different to what my colleague might use, but what works for me is different to what works for her. And I think you just have to trust your vet on that really, don't you? A lot of the time, or have a chat with them, but there'll be a reason why they do what they do.
Yes. And with that in mind, there's a reason of why they may choose a particular euthanasia technique over another. So right now, it is still most common to perform euthanasia with an injectable drug via the vein.
Yeah.
But there are more and more veterinarians that have learned alternative techniques that are very much approved that deliver the drug to the body in a way that completely avoids the vein. So if you've ever had that done with any of your dogs, hopefully it was very, very peaceful and very smooth. But a lot of the times it can be hard to find a vein on an older dog, one that is maybe near the natural end of its life, which, you know, there's been times where dogs have come to me for euthanasia and pass in the room before I've done anything at all. You know, they're that close.
Yeah.
So knowing that, we get the idea that blood pressures in the veins might be very flat. So to trust your veterinarian if they want to move forward with an alternative technique, these alternatives, again, are become very, very common. They're in most of the euthanasia guidelines now.
Yeah. Yeah.
And just to allow death to then come when it comes. In fact, I had a conversation yesterday with my students at Colorado State University, and we said that a fast death does not always equal a good death.
No.
Because sometimes families just need a little bit of time to breathe and to adjust, where it doesn't have to be, the blink of an eye.
Yeah.
That it's okay for it maybe to take just a few minutes for us to acknowledge and prepare for this permanent change. That we always say in euthanasia that we are literally watching a book close, a very important chapter in our life with this beloved dog that will never be the same. So it's
No.
okay to just have a little space to breathe and to sink into this new normal. And then when euthanasia is complete, to have some time, right? To be there, that private time, to now see this dog in a new physical state, quiet, with all energy released now. And it can be very transformative.
I think a lot of people, it's something that a lot of people remark, is that after their dog has passed, they do look so peaceful and relaxed, and they just look like they're asleep. And a lot of these dogs haven't been relaxed prior to that. They may be quite painful, or ideally not, but in some situations they're painful and they're tense, and they just don't want to be touched because they're a little bit sore here and there. And actually, once they've passed, it's almost a relief to see that difference in just the way their body is. And I think a lot of people go away and actually feel, yeah, we've done the right thing, and we really appreciate now that he was suffering and that we did need to do this, and we're not happy but relieved that we made that decision.
Yes, that really parallels with a comment that Carrie made in the chat box. There is that sedation before euthanasia is so powerful, that blessed sleep, to see them now pain-free. A lot of times they're breathing easier. And then after death, to also see that, right? And hopefully the final moments before euthanasia weren't a struggle. That the dog was very comfortable, but even more so than after death, to see them quiet. And it reminds me of another important concept here. And that is, if ever you're not sure if you want to be present for euthanasia, or maybe you've had a bad experience before and you're worried about that happening again, is to just open up that conversation with the veterinary team and ask questions. Let them know what happened before. How are we going to avoid that this time, so that you can feel safe to remain present? And if you still don't want to be there for the actual moment of death, that's okay. That's perfectly okay. What a lot of families have made choices for is to be there during sedation time. So when the dog has fallen deep into sleep, then they may choose to step out at that point. And that's often really good for the dog. But even if you don't want to be there through any part of it, it's okay, because the veterinary team will step in and they will play the role of compassionate caregiver in those final moments. And I do believe that your dog will be in good hands.
Yeah, I do. And it's something that I never rush people into making those decisions, because sometimes they're not even thought about whether they want to be there or not, and they just need that time. And we don't. I mean, there was a comment up here earlier on about that sedation seems to be more common practice in America than it is in the UK, and I think that's probably true. Why is sedation before euthanasia common in the US but less so in the UK? I had to have sedation for 2 of my dogs last year, and in one case she reacted badly to it, and that made the whole situation very upsetting. Now, you might find that vet may not want to sedate again if they've had that bad experience, and so it's not something to, I'll be honest, I don't sedate every dog for euthanasia. It's something I talk about with every owner and say, we can do this, or we can do this. And with the whole process of putting the catheter in the vein or whether we do an alternative technique. And again, there was a question about what are the alternative techniques, and it would mainly be, well, for me, my other technique that I sometimes use nowadays would be to sedate and then give a little injection into the kidney, which it allows, if they're quite deeply sedated, it seems to be quite a nice way for the dogs to pass. But it's something I no euthanasia is ever the same for me, and we discuss it, and I feel that's really, really important to discuss it, because I want people to be prepared for what might happen and what is going to happen.
Yeah, my heart goes out to the one that shared that it didn't go well with the sedation. Definitely not something anybody wants. We always want that nice, smooth experience. But every once in a while, there's a sweetie that just has what we'll say, a difficult reaction, or doesn't necessarily welcome in the drugs in the way that would be normally anticipated. So the more that veterinarians understand about sedation, and hopefully they're going to follow suit with what's happening in the US as far as understanding the drugs and what's available, because we do have a lot of similar drugs between the two countries, that to not have a cookie cutter approach, right? Because every single dog has a little bit different physical needs, and maybe how they've reacted to other drugs in the past and those things. So Nikki, you're exactly right, is to make it very streamlined to every single dog. Then if it's a matter of which technique to use, I'll just go ahead and list it out for Annette's sake here. That and by the way, Nikki, kudos for maybe being good at intrarenals in dogs. That's actually it takes a lot of skill to be able to do that, because it's more common technique for cats, actually.
It is more cats.
It is more for the cats. Yeah. So for dogs, just so that our audience is aware, there are 5 ways, injection techniques, that the barbiturate or pentobarbital, typically used for euthanasia, can be given. So that's going to be intravenous, or into the vein, intracardiac, or into the heart. And I know that sounds like maybe a little bit odd, but the heart is a big vessel. It just is a vessel with muscle around it. So that is actually an extremely common technique. And then it's intrahepatic, or in the liver, intrarenal, into the kidney, or intraperitoneal, which is into the belly. But the goal with any of them is to give the medicine or drug in an area within the body that has a lot of blood flow, because the drug works on the brain. That's where it goes. So we just have to get it into the body in such a way that it's going to quickly get into the vessels, into the vasculature, the blood, to get to the brain. So intravenous is very, very common, because that's a direct source to blood. Same with the heart. Yeah, same with the heart. So if your veterinarian reaches for any of those techniques, they have a good reason to do so. And then I'll just say intraperitoneal, or into the belly, takes the longest time for the passing to occur, because it has to absorb across the linings of the body within the interior. But again, as we said before, a fast death isn't always a good death. So even if it takes 15 minutes or a little bit longer for our dog to pass, they're sleeping. They are sound asleep and very, very deep and comfortable. And then often it's a time to share stories. And if your veterinarian ever has to switch techniques, they had one planned and now they need to move to another one, they're doing that again, because they're just trying to get that drug into the body, up to the brain, so it can do its work.
Yeah. And as long as your dog isn't suffering at that point, that's okay. You can be with them, talking to them, and talking to each other, can't you? And let the vet do what they know, what they need to do. But the main thing is, we have to make sure that your dog isn't suffering and they're not painful, and that these last moments of his or her life are going to be as peaceful and as smooth as they can be, and for you too. But ultimately, the most important part of this is your dog, which is really important to remember. I just wanted to go back to a couple of these. So there was someone wrote about the other dog. And when you were saying about this, it's not something that many people ask in the UK. Can we bring our other dog? And maybe we should. But does anyone have any thoughts on how we allow our other dog to come to terms with the situation? My mum is taking her out of the house during the process as she will bark and stress at the vet. Should she come and see him before the crematorium people come for him? I think it's a very individual situation. But thank you for bringing it up, because I would encourage you to talk to your vet about this. Is there some way that your other dog won't get stressed when the vet comes in? Is there any way that we could manage this and make your other dog part of the process rather than take them out of the situation, unless that is what is best for the other dog? I mean, would you have any suggestions about that?
I'm always an advocate to allow other animals to be present for euthanasia. And yes, there are some situations where the other dog or the other pets are going to be a huge distraction. However, I've never, in over 10,000 euthanasias at this time, have had a family say, I wish I wouldn't have let my other animals be there for their sake. If there was a reason to not have them there, again, it was because of the family's distraction, puppies and somebody that's playful or just all over the place, right? Busybodies in another quiet space. But the power of an animal seeing the death of another animal is there. It's the potential for them to understand that death has come. Now, that being said, there are many instances where you could not have picked up on the body language from the other dog, that if they understood or not, is I guess what I'm trying to say. They didn't change in the slightest, right? They never grieved afterwards. They were just going about their normal business. In fact, I actually, during the euthanasia of a dog with another dog in the room, or cat for that matter, am open to active signs of death. And some of us might be familiar with this concept of agonal breathing, a deep reflexive breath that happens sometimes during death. A breath like that only happens at the moment of death. And I've seen other animals pick up on that. They might be laying across the room or being busy doing something else. And when they hear those breaths, they come over to the body sometimes and they'll smell and they'll look around. And to me, that's a sense that they're understanding, or that they can smell around the body and those things. What almost invariably happens, and Nikki, I'd be curious if you see the same, is when other pets are in the room and we pronounce euthanasia complete, that the heart has stopped, there is a shift in the energy in the room. We all feel it. And the other animals often will go over to the side of the room and take a nap. They'll just be like, we're done. Like it's just like, okay. Everything, they just feel that relaxation, and then they want to just go off and take a snooze.
Have you seen that? Because they've picked up on the whole tension and everything that's been going on. And no, you're right. That does happen. And I can't think of a time ever in 20 years that somebody has brought the other dog into the consult room in practice. That's bad. That I've not really encouraged that, to be honest. And nobody's really asked me about it. But yes, on house visits, definitely there have been other animals around, and we have had that chat about, do you want them out of the room? No, if they're not going to distract us, then absolutely, it's fine. They're part of your family. They need to be here. But it's interesting. I don't think anybody has ever asked me, can I bring my other dog to the practice for an in-practice euthanasia?
And I think there's a lot of reasonable thought behind that, in that if things are too emotional, we don't want the other dog to have a negative experience, too much stress in the hospital, because they're still going to continue life and they're going to have to go back to the vet's office for other things. So if we do want other dogs to be present, then home environment is useful.
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, because it's definitely, well, I say that, I was going to say it's definitely nicer to have a home euthanasia, but actually some people have very valid reasons for not wanting it at home, in that, I've had people say to me before, I don't want him or her to have her last moments in the home where we're going to have that last memory. And although we hope that it will be a nice memory when in time to come, they just don't want to have it. That's for me. I kind of see where they're coming from. And that's again, it's something to discuss, isn't it? Now that we can offer that again, we should be, but we have to go through it, and we should be going through it in depth.
Yes, most veterinarians can perform euthanasia in a variety of locations. And if the home is not the right fit for whatever reason, and the vet's office is not the right fit, there might be a safe kind of neutral space that you can ask for, whether or not it be outside in a yard or in a, I don't know what your rules are in England
you're
there.
not allowed to do it in, well, I say you're not allowed to do this in public parks and things, parks, but I have done it in a little beautiful quiet garden of a park close to where I live. And it was beautiful. It was lovely. It was a really lovely euthanasia. And I'm pleased we did it like that. But we're not supposed to.
So another option is actually at the crematory or at the pet cemetery. So if you're planning on your pet to go there anyway for aftercare services, you might be able to have a mobile vet meet you there if the crematory is open to it, because usually crematories are lovely spaces, lovely spaces. I would encourage all of you, if you haven't done so, to tour your local crematory and see what everything that they provide, and you might actually have that to be a place for euthanasia.
I think that's something that could be done in the UK. I think maybe that should be. I don't think it's being offered. If it is, it's not offered enough. But that could be something that we could build on. That would be a really good idea, I think. Then you have the time that you need. You have more space. You know, you're not going there to get a vaccination or something routine, are you? It becomes a very unique place and probably more peaceful and restful than if you're coming into a normal practice.
Yes, very, very true. Very, very true.
So we've got a comment here from Leanne. When I worked at a clinic, I always encouraged owners to bring their other pets. It certainly allows the living pet to know what happened and they seem to move on and not be looking for their friend that passed. That's really good, Leanne. If you're doing that, we should all be doing that too, or thinking about it anyway, as long as it's not going to be detrimental to the other dog. This is a nice one from Sharon. I had one of my dogs put to sleep in a very quiet wood, thanks to a very understanding vet. I mean, there are ways around these things. So if you have an idea of where you might want a euthanasia to happen, talk to us, because it may be something that we can arrange. Definitely. It's best to be open. This is not a taboo topic. Like Kathy said at the beginning, it's something we should be talking about. We talk about it with people. So we should be talking about it. And if you have something you would like to happen, talk to us. And we can only say no if it's not possible.
Absolutely. And just a reminder about the importance of hospice and palliative medicine at the end of our dog's journey, and just the nature of those type of conversations. How can I provide more medical support? How can I get more emotional support? Lends itself to talk about euthanasia or the natural dying process, if we're not even going to choose euthanasia for whatever reason. So have these conversations as early as possible. And I wanted to show something here. This is actually a brochure that I put together many years ago on osteoarthritis. You could probably just see it there. And I have 20 different disease brochures. In fact, Caring Pathways, the company that I'm with now in Colorado and in Virginia, actually has all 20 of these disease brochures. And in the inside, it talks about what is it, what is the prognosis, how is it managed. But right here, you can see, I know that you can't read these and that's okay, but it says like what's early signs of osteoarthritis and later stages, and then what are signs of crisis. And on the back, there's information about common signs of pain. Things like this to start to utilize with your veterinary team, again, opens up that conversation and helps everybody get on the same page. And that's what's going to be amazingly useful for our dogs, because they need us. They need us to be talking about it. They need us to be preparing so that we're in a good mental state ourselves as pet owners. That we're going to manage any of these, these symptoms that come their way. We talk about the importance of physical well-being for our dogs, which will lead to emotional well-being and social well-being, keeps them engaged, keeps them happy all the way up until those last moments.
Yeah, so important. There's a comment here from Annette. My osteoarthritic dog gets scared when he sees a vet. Would it be an idea to ask for oral sedation that I could administer myself so he would be asleep when the vet arrives at our home? Yes, absolutely. Talk to your vet. Assuming that they've seen him recently enough and they know enough about him, I'm sure that would be an option. But yeah, talk to them. That's definitely something we can do.
Definitely. And those are referred to as pre-visit pharmaceuticals, that as long as you have a relationship with your veterinarian, you've got that VCPR where they can script out meds that can be provided for you to bring the pet into the hospital, or even if it's going to be a home service. So
Yeah.
definitely. And what we always recommend is for veterinarians to go high, right? To give more than what we might typically do if life was going to continue. So we can go a little bit higher than we normally might because it's euthanasia.
Yeah. Yeah. So it might not be something that your vet would suggest to you because they may not know or they may not appreciate how the vet impacts your dog. So mention it, because definitely they may not think about it themselves, but please do talk to your vet about it. I just wanted to quickly touch on palliative care because I just want to make it clear to people about what palliative care is. So this isn't things to try and necessarily make anything better. We're just trying to, I mean, how would you describe it? Controlling pain, keeping them eating.
Yeah. So the word to palliate means to cloak or to hide. So when we're palliating a condition like arthritis, we're not curing it. We're not making it go away. We're just hiding it so that the dog can continue to enjoy life and be active and be mobile and do those favorite things. So if we're talking about curing a condition, that would be curative medicine. If we're just talking about keeping the disease or the condition present, but reducing the obviousness of it, that's palliating. So palliative medicine can come in the form of pain management, to nausea control, to antibiotics, where we're maybe helping keep an infection down, but not, again, curing it. There is things that we can do for the brain, for cognition, that, again, we're not improving the brain necessarily, but we're just trying to help to maintain some normal functioning. So it's all over the place. But palliative medicine and palliative care are also two different things. So there's medicine, and then there's care, which might be more of those household modifications, environmental changes. We might be reaching for things that are alternative therapies that aren't traditional drugs. And all that. So we can lump a lot of things that we do to manage symptoms into this category of palliative care.
And that is definitely something that is better recently, because we have a lot more tools to use, a lot more medicines to use, and we're just more aware of what to use, and maybe more aware of recognizing symptoms and signs. I think especially with arthritis in particular, mainly down to CAM and everyone that watches the stuff from CAM and reads about it. We know we're looking at these signs, like you're saying in the pamphlet, those signs as your osteoarthritis is gradually getting worse. People are picking these things up as owners and as vets and physios and therapists. Everyone's picking them up a lot better, and then we can use those tools and palliative care better as well. So yeah, definitely something that's improving.
And, at some point we have to make a choice between quality and quantity of life. And there's a tendency to avoid some of the really good pain medications or drugs that are out there because it may worsen the liver or it may worsen the kidney and those things. What we have found is that if we don't provide really good pain management with the trade-off of maybe some decreasing organ function, when pain remains present, we're more likely to reach for euthanasia sooner. So we generally have the conversation with our clients about what's most important here? And often it is, I just don't want my dog to be in pain. Well, then we're going to reach for the good stuff. We're going to go big, and we're going to be making more aggressive than we otherwise might be, with that understanding that we might not have 8 months, we might have 4 months or 6 months, but they're going to be good 4 to 6 months. You know, that's the hope anyway, or longer. Of course, we could be talking years, not just months, but it's, again, that open, honest conversation about what are our goals at this time, and what do we think is best for our dog, and making sure that we're not pushing treatments that our dog's going to hate, you know, where they're just going to be more miserable. Oftentimes we reach for euthanasia in those situations sooner than later, because we know that things are going to get worse. And if we don't want them to get worse, then it's okay to release them from their body before things get more difficult.
Yeah, definitely. I've just got one final comment really here, because I think it kind of ends things really nicely. But from Laura, who is one of our ambassadors and does a lot for CAM and with CAM, and who recently lost her dog. Chaos collapsed, and her final appointment ended up being an emergency. But having an end-of-life plan in place that I discussed while she was well was so helpful and comforting at an incredibly stressful and sad time. And I think from everything that we've just talked about today, and I know Chaos was on quite a lot of medication towards the end, and you know, it wasn't expected, but it happened. And that's just a really nice comment, Laura. Thank you for sharing that, because it's so important, and it just goes to show that all that work you put in behind the scenes really paid off, I suppose. Well, not paid off, that's probably the wrong thing to say, but helped in a really stressful and awful situation.
Love it. And I'll also close by just sharing that the CAETA program recently completed a pet owner survey about what equals a good death or a bad death. And we're preparing to publish our findings here before too long. But one of the overall themes was that pre-planning made all the difference, and being their own best advocate and being empowered to speak up about what they want. And that emergency situations on average ranks lower in the good euthanasia scale because of the traumatic nature of it. The everybody's amped up, not relaxed, tends to be a little bit more rushed. But even in an emergency situation, we can still advocate to slow things down. That's where sedatives make a big difference, and trying to find at least maybe a comfortable room where we can gather on the floor or invite in loved ones still. So it's wonderful, Laura, that you had everything in place. For those of you who don't, you find yourself in an emergency situation, still speak up, still talk, still ask for what you want.
Yeah, please do. Good. Please do. Well, thank you. I'm just reading a lot of the other comments as well about this is just ringing so true for me, either for those of you that have recently lost your dogs or are at that point in their lives where you're considering end of life. And just want to let you know that we're all here for you. And you know, Holly's Army is a fantastic group. We've all been through it, and we're all here. If anyone needs to talk, or your vets as well, please do use them and speak to them, because they do care, and they do know, if they've especially been through this journey with you for a long time with an arthritic dog, you know, they want to be part of that process with you. So keep talking to each other. And I just want to say thank you so much for coming on this evening and talking to us with all your experience. It's just been really amazing. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me. Thanks for introducing me to this wonderful group. And just like we say with so many things, I wish I would have known about it sooner. So thank you. Now I'm aware, and will continue to support your group as best I can.
Thank you so much. Enjoy your evening, everybody, and we will see you soon. Take care. Bye.